This show is sponsored by the Comics Shop. We hope you enjoy the show.
All right, hello, and mate, welcome to Tuesday Chinwag. Hello to Peter Lane. My name is Leigh Chalker, and as I said, this is Tuesday Chinwag, first one back for a while. So it's it's lovely to be back. And before I get into some other little intros, I'm going to welcome our lovely guest here today, Mr. Chris Sequeira. How are you, sir?
I am very well indeed, Mr. Chalker. Lovely to be a guest on your show.
Mate, it is lovely to have you. I've wanted you on this show for quite some time, so it's a real honour and pleasure to have you back or have you here. Maybe we have talked before on another show. We were just talking about parallel universes and stuff in the pre-show. But, you know, hey, Gary, how are you, mate? But, you know, we could come up with that again and talk about that a little later on. So, you know, this is just what Chinwag's all about. Omni Bo, how are you, buddy? Look, it's lovely to be back. I do apologise about the delay in things between transmissions, but this station is back to normal operation. Chinwag will be on every fortnight now, so bringing you guests and stuff like that. Now, another thing, hello Thomas, how are you, buddy? Good drawing tonight, man. You're on fire. The other thing, the other elephant in the room, Dave Dye, champion. I do want to just talk about how Claudia is, I have had a slight change of appearance. I'd like to get that out of the way now so, you know, it doesn't cause anyone any concern. You have caught me out, and I did lash out today and buy myself a new Paisley shirt. So I hope it all works for you, and here we go. So the show is based, for all of you viewers at home that have never seen it before, is based on 6 prompting words, questions: who, what, where, when, how, and why. And, sometimes we get through them and sometimes we do not. This is just what Chinwag is all about, and this is the pleasure of, Chinwaggin. So, Christopher Sequeira. Who?
Okay, well, I guess in the comics context, I'm principally known as a comics writer, but I've been a comics writer, I've been a publisher, I've been an editor, I've been an editor-in-chief, I've even... My American buddy Mark Wade often jokes about, he's been a retailer, he's been a publisher, he's been a writer, editor, blah, blah, blah. He's done everything to put the staples in, right? I've put the staples in. For a while there, when I was self-publishing comics at one stage, me and a friend of mine, Kurt Stone, we bought a printing press and we actually printed ourselves 3 or 4 comic books and printed them, put them together, stapled them, put them in the boxes, and shipped it to the national distributor, had them distributed around the country. So I put the staples in.
Now, with your printing press that you got, now I have heard stories from varying other people, in particular Mr. Gary Della, about how he had to remove a wall from his house to get a printing press in. You didn't have to go to any such, we innovations?
Kurt got a second-hand Gestetner offset printing press that basically just fit in his garage.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It was amazing. So we did about 3 or 4 comics that went out printed like that and distributed. So yeah, I've done it all. I've done what we used to call separations, color separations. We have different plates of colors that go off to the printer when they used to print by photographic plates. I've done those. Yeah. I used to draw a bit more, but I just about hardly do any commercial drawing because I'm too slow.
Yeah. Oh, do you still dabble a little bit on the side?
Look, I know enough about artwork to be useful in terms of reviewing portfolios, but mostly in laying out a page and thinking about the amount of space on a page and and going for, okay, choices about close-ups, mid shots, two shots, long shot, worm's eye view, bird's eye view, and a few things like that, and understanding some stuff about composition and spotting and blacks. I could do a decent, say, cover or something like that, but it'd take me so long to do, they wouldn't be worth me doing. So I don't do it much anymore. Might do it to amuse myself or do a quick sketchbook. Sometimes people come up to me at cons and they give me sketch covers. Like I did some work for through a few different Phantom comics at one stage, and I still get people coming up with through sketch covers and go, "Oh, do a cover for me," and I'll go, "I'll just do you a sketchy one, not a fully detailed." And they go, "Yeah," and they love what I do, but it's more clever design choices to make up for the speed.
Yeah, fair enough. I've been off social media for like a fair while, and you need a detox from things, man. As anyone that's seen any of these chinwags, you'd be aware that I, without throwing a stone at myself, but I have quite an addictive personality, and I've had to shy away from a few things over the years, but. I just threw myself on there, maybe 2 or 3 weeks back to, like have a little wander, and see what's happening. And you had tacked up. I'm assuming it is one of your first self-published comic books. You put a post up, and we're discussing it at the time. I'm not sure whether it was one of those memories that come up or not, or something like that. But it had a most unusual name that I can't think off the top of my head. What was the name of it?
I don't know which one you'd be talking about, unless you were talking about. I mean, the two titles that I distributed to Aussie news agents years ago was one was a series and one was a one shot. The series was Pulse of Darkness.
Oh yeah.
Was that it?
No. But let's talk about Pulse of Darkness, man.
Oh, we will. But the other title was Rattlebone the Pulp-Faced Detective. Was that it?
That's the one. That's the one I saw. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, and then some years after that, I did publish again under a different shingle, a bunch of one-shots, and they were, I think there were 6 of them. There was Pulse and Rattlebone again, and then there was also Mr. Blood. There was an anthology book called Bold Action. There was, the Borderlander, a mystical superhero that I did with Steve Propos and Chewy Chan. And the 4th one, I can't think of at the time. But, so I've done a couple of direct self-publishing to news agents across the country.
Yeah. No, it's cool, man. Like I love going back and just randomly coming across people's, like where they started and stuff, and like that caught my attention immediately. Because even though this is the first time that you and I have ever spoken together, I don't want it to sound weird, man, but when it surprised me that it wasn't this long ago, but I actually have a copy of Borderlander. I'm disappointed I didn't get it out of my portal over there. Dave Dye be throwing stones at his screen, telling me I should have my portal closer. But, the portal is where the portal is, man. I don't control these things, or perhaps I do. But now I looked at the date today, and this, I thought it was a lot longer ago. So, like maybe, that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know. Perspective is everything, really. But I'm going to go with they exist. So it's a good thing. Now, I know that you like your classic literature. And I have been brought up in a house where classic literature was, available. Anything you wanted to read, really, so lucky. But at the time, and it appears to be 2009, that when I was wandering the news agents of Townsville in North Queensland, searching, devouring anything I could get my hands on, I came across this.
Oh,
and then I followed it with this, and then I went back after and got this one, and I got this one, and man, I'm telling you, these Sherlock Holmes comics, man, have stuck out to me in my mind for a very long time, and I do actually come back to them and have a look at them. You know what I mean?
well, look, I'm glad to see you're up and around after that dreadful experience, mate.
Oh, mate, it was more the exhaustion of having my mind blown back in the day, to be honest with you, Chris, because it got to a point, man, where what I really liked about it, mate, is I'd read a lot of Sherlock Holmes stuff. I'd seen a lot of the the BBC productions on TV. I do, I like Sherlock Holmes. I mean, there's something pretty cool about it. I guess an English detective that smokes opium and boxes, to fight crime and stuff in that period of London history, which if you don't like that period of London, the look, the aesthetics, that whole I guess steampunky vibe and stuff like that, I don't know, but I would question their taste, but that's just me. But I also noticed too that this was through Black House Comics. Now, Black House Comics, if my memory serves me correctly, and I don't even need to use my memory because it's probably on the inside cover. Now, that was Jeffrey's printing, something to do with that.
Black House Comics was owned by the same people that owned Jeffrey's printing. That's right.
Right. Yeah.
A fella called Baden Kurgan.
Yeah. Okay, I've heard that name before. So how? Because I want to track your career, because you've had an interesting career, and we'll get through that, because this, I guess this is your show and this is your story to tell, mate, and I don't know your story. So I want to hear it, because I feel like I have known you for a long time. From your mate's printing press in the garage, so we can get just random, so we can get some idea of the size of the printing press. Single port garage or double?
I'm pretty sure it's single from memory. I haven't been back there for years, but yeah, single as far as I remember.
Okay. Did he get a car in with the printer in there or not?
I think he had a carport, so I think he didn't need to.
Okay. So that's cool. All printing boxes, it's all covered in the... That's cool. I love that stuff, man. All right. So how did you come to this? How did we get
what happened with Black House Comics, if I'm remembering correctly, and Baden Kurgan is still around. I'm mates with him still and talk to him. I still do stuff with him to this very day. He advertised that he was thinking of starting a comics company, and I think he put something up on a website. It might have been there was an old Aussie comics message board thing. I'm trying to think of the name of it, and I can't, and it'll come to me later. And I think he might have posted saying he was interested in looking around for proposals. So I contacted him from that, and and his operations in Sydney, and I'm in Sydney. So he said, I'll come and have a chat. So I came and have a chat with a whole bunch of different material under my arm. And we chatted for a bit, and he talked about the kind of things he was looking to do. And I left him some samples of different stuff. And he looked at some of it, and he said, there was one, actually, he was sort of keen on Pulse to some degree or another, right? Of bringing Pulse back. But he said to me, Oh, I've heard this. He said, I've seen some reference to something on a message board or Facebook or something. He said to me something about you and Sherlock Holmes. What's that all about? And I said, oh, look, I developed a treatment for a screenplay for a Sherlock Holmes movie. This is before Robert Downey Jr. And I was working on it for my mate, Dave Elsey, who won the 2010 Academy Award for Best Makeup for The Wolfman with Benicio del Toro. And Dave's a Sherlock Holmes fan. Dave's originally from London, has worked in Hollywood, and for several years he was living 15 minutes away from me in Sydney. And we met because he was reaching out to Sherlock Holmes clubs, talking to people, and we met because of that. And because we met because of that, we ended up, so he said, I've got an idea for some Sherlock Holmes related movie stuff, but I don't write. I just conceptualize and, do cool makeups and things like that. Dave did, and his wife Lou did every creature in all the seasons of that TV show that was shot here, Farscape. And Dave did Revenge of the Sith. He did all the creatures in that. He designed Anakin all burnt up and turned into Darth Vader. That was all Dave, right? And he won an Oscar for Wolfman. Anyway, Dave and I had started hanging out, and I'd started trying to develop this concept for him. And we were going along, just sort of chugging away. And then I think we sort of got poleaxed by the Robert Downey Jr. thing coming out. And so, but we had the thing sitting there. I can't remember if that was the thing or whether it just was Baden came along and was asking about it. And I had a mention of it on some platform I'm on. And Baden said, what's this Sherlock Holmes thing? Actually, I know what it was. It was a reference somewhere. I'd done 3 short stories for 3 different overseas publishers about Sherlock Holmes. And Baden said, what's the connection between? I said, I just love the character, And he said, you got anything on that? And I said to Dave, this guy's interested in a comic. What do you think? Could we do that? And he said, yeah, show it to him. So I showed it to Baden. He said, I really like it. Could we do something with that? And true story, the thing that Dave and I had worked out in the Sherlock Holmes timeline would take place about 1891 and beyond. And what I said to Baden was, how about I give you the same timeline, but from 1887 on, because there's all these things that could happen in a comic, an ongoing comic, years before you get to that big story. There's some other big stories we could have. And he said, write it up. So I wrote it up and he said, we're doing it, right? So it was me and Dave as co-creator. And then we hunted around for artists. And on the first issue, Jan Scherpenhausen helped us out. Tim McEwen helped us out. But Phil Cornell came in as the main art guy. And Phil drew it and coloured it. And Dave then did this, what we called digital Victorianization of the colours. He used tools that he uses for designing makeups and applied them to the colouring thing and did all these weird digital effects to make it look sort of grimy and soot-covered Victorian London. And people really loved what he did with the colours. So that was our finished team, and we did 8 issues before it wound up. Phil and I have got most of a 9th issue done, and we might bring it back next year with IPI Comics, but we'll see. But we did 8 issues that went to Aussie newsagents, and then it got picked up later. The first 4 issues, there was a trade paperback with Caliber Comics in the US. So the first storyline and the sort of like the standalone 4th issue got packaged together in a trade paperback in the United States for Caliber Entertainment. But it was never published. It was never published as singles in the US. So that's something we'll probably do with IPI Comics down the track.
Yeah. No, that's cool, man. Because we'll get to the darker half. Sean Craig, I take it. Leigh, what the hell happened to your beard? I don't know, Sean. It was there 1 minute and gone the next, mate. Like everything's subject to change. So, it is what it is. But thank you for noticing. Mate, we'll get to your comic, like what you're doing now, a little bit later on down the track. But
Sure.
I'm going to definitely say that one of the things that I loved most about this was indeed the colouring, was indeed the what I thought was just well, by that stage, I guess I'd probably, and people may hate me for this, but this is, I remember what I was thinking at the time. Sherlock, I was wondering if anyone had done, how do we say, maybe things just you can't do much more with a character. And one of the things that I would say attracted me to the comic book is what your whole team, but your writing did for the character, because it brought, for me, the character into, I guess at that stage, a really fresh light, man. I just hammered it, man, and I was keen as mustard to get back to all these issues. I'm pretty sure I do have another couple of issues floating around, but for some reason, I think that possibly, you could correct me here if I'm wrong, that may have been about the time where some Australian comic books were slowly just, I guess, inkling out of newsagents about that time.
Look, I don't have any firm recollections of whether Baden was having any troubles with the newsagent distribution by issue 8, but can't remember. But it's a very tough road to hoe. It's a very tough road to hoe. So I mean, and his plan had been to go to the US and put it through Diamond and all that, but accumulating enough material to feed a big funnel like Diamond was a challenge.
Yeah.
So anyway, and in the end, he decided not to go ahead with that aspect of things. But that's fine. He gave people like me, and also he did a 2 or 3 issue book with Jan Scherpenhausen, a sort of a post-apocalyptic FBI thing called the Twilight Age. He gave Jan Scherpenhausen opportunity to do those. I think they might have been convention books rather than newsagent books. I can't remember. Jason Paulos did a couple of books for Baden, anthologies of Jason's horror stories called Eek.
Yes.
Yeah, so Jason did a few that were sent to newsagents by Baden. So look, Black House, and he Black House also did some zombie short story magazine called After the World, and they were really cool too. Yeah. So a lot of people are very appreciative of Baden supporting local talent.
Yeah. No, man, I've got some of those novellas as well, man. Good stuff. Like that, man. I'd at the time never seen covers quite like this.
The covers are all by Dave.
Yeah, right.
And for example, I see that the number 3. So Dave, the other one, number 3, that one. Yeah. So Dave, years right at the beginnings of people doing it, he was using a tool called ZBrush.
Yep.
He'd go into Hollywood and they'd say, we want to have, I'm just making stuff up here. We want to make Bruce, what's his name, up like an alien for Star Wars. Show us what it's going to look like, Dave. So Dave would get photographs of Bruce, what's his name, that tall, thin Aussie actor, and he would use digital tools to manipulate the photograph and say, this is what he'll look like if I put a prosthetic makeup on him. This is the design, and you can see I've used his photograph as a baseline, to give you some idea of the finished product. And they used to love that because it was much quicker in terms of approval process because he could do it on the photograph. So Dave became incredibly skilled with this ZBrush and does these beautiful images covers. He also, after doing these, he started to get offers to do book covers, which he still does and does for different people. So that number 3 of Holmes versus Moriarty, but they're not looking at each other, which sort of symbolises the story. They don't connect face to face. That's Dave's co-winner of the 2010 Oscar, the famous makeup man Rick Baker as Moriarty. And that's Dave. And that's Dave as Sherlock Holmes.
Well, there you go. Bloody hell. Well, there you go. There's a little tidbit of information for anyone. So there you are.
Rick Baker has won 7 or 8 Oscars for makeup. He wanted to be Moriarty, and Dave said, "Could Moriarty have a beard?" I said, "I love it. Beard and long hair. We'll just Phil, just draw it like that, you know." So it was just fantastic. So we made that the look for our Moriarty.
I reckon it's a cool looking look, man.
Yeah, it was great. It was just awesome.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful stuff, man. It's left. I've always remembered those and often gone back.
And look, it's still a favourite series of mine, and Dave and I and Phil, reminisce about it, I guess you could say, from time to time, and we'd like to bring it back. A couple of people have come to us periodically over the years and talked about trying to sell it as an animated series or a live action series, and we still get those conversations going with people. Will it ever happen? Probably not, but we're always we let people talk to us, and if they want to sort of talk to us and talk to people, that's fine. Our particular take on it, we've got notes for 100 issues. If the money was ever there, we could. I've got notes for 100 issues. Is what Dave and I wanted, and Phil was on board from the start because we're all Sherlock Holmes nuts, right? Is Sherlock Holmes meets Hammer horror, just like the 1959 Peter Cushing Hound of the Baskervilles, but crank that up to 11.
Yeah.
Go for the Hammer horror vibe, but then just crank it up to 11. Yeah,
that's cool, man. I hope you get these things done, man. I like the fact that it's.
Look at that. It doesn't matter. You got to find the joy in the job.
Yeah, for sure. But the best thing is, part of that joy too, man, would be the fact that it's still resonating with people because they're coming to you, and talking to you about these things and stuff, man. So, I reckon that's something, man.
The second storyline that we didn't finish publishing, which I'd like to, we cranked it up again because the second storyline, if you didn't see it, which started about issue 5, was basically called Sherlock Holmes and the Knights of Frankenstein. And we had this amazing character that Phil designed called the Marquis of Frankenstein. And it was like an 8-foot tall, scarred, weird-looking thing, but he wore, this beautifully frilly ruffled shirts and neck piece and had a monocle and a top hat and, this and a velvet vest and all this sort of thing. So, and he, speaks very poetically and quotes Shelley and Byron and whatnot. So, and the story was all about the mystery of that character.
Yeah. Oh, well, look, you had me at monocle, man. I'm a bit of a sucker for anyone wearing a monocle, mate. Hello, how are you to whoever Leah Bryce is? It's I've never met you before, so thank you for watching the show and giving us a shout out. Now, Mr. Challoner put up a thing before. Was the Oz chat thing that you were talking about, Pulp Faction? Was that the name of it?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Thank you, Gary. It was the web pages where that stuff was happening was called Pulp Faction. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Gary. All right, we got that covered. I wonder, out there in the interweb somewhere.
Not to be confused with Bold Action, which was the title of one of my one-shot comics.
All right. All right. Talk to us about Bold Action. What was that about? And was anyone wearing a monocle?
That was one of those 6 one-shot comics I did.
Yeah.
So it was an anthology, and it had a Rattlebone story, a Mr. Blood story, a hooded assassin character called the Deathsman was in there, and there was some other one-pager or something. So that was just all sort of short, sharp, violent sort of comic book, almost probably a slightly crimey version of 2000 AD type comics. And Mr. Blood was sort of he had one foot in crime because he was a hitman for hire, but his other foot was he was a hitman for hire who secretly worked for Satan.
Right. That's cool. That's cool. I like it. I like it. You got a really broad range of creative thoughts going on here, man, through your time and stuff like that.
Oh, you're very kind.
No, that's fine, man. You generally and genuinely do. What do you feed your creativity, man? Like, what sparks you off? Like, I love creativity. I mean, creativity has look, it's had a huge impact on my life. Obviously, I'd go so far, and I've said it in the past, to say that creativity has probably saved my life, man, even in recent memory. So I'm very interested to know what gets your synapses sparking, man. Look,
I've been, I was an early omnivorous reader, and I was reading well beyond my chronological age when I was little. And I was an avid artist and writer from when I was a little kid as well. When we were little kids in the school holidays, one of the things that we would do was we would get reams of photocopy paper, right? Fold a bunch of pages in half, put 2 staples in the side, and just start drawing on page 1, and then just keep going to the last page. We just say that's a book, and we just draw our own illustrated books, and then they became comics. And me and my 2 brothers would do this, and we just my next 2 brothers, I've got 3 brothers, and we just do it for bloody 2 weeks non-stop. We'd pile up these things, by the truckload, and make a mountain of these things. And we just do that. And, writing and drawing was just absolute fun. And then I guess is when I started to think about doing it seriously as an adult, although some people question how adult I am to this very day. The difference was obviously you approach it differently, and you try and be more serious. And I guess I start with writing just the way most writers do. You start imitating the works and the writers that you love. You start sort of going, if I love horror stories, I'll try and do something as good as or in the vein of, pardon the pun, of a Bram Stoker or an H.P. Lovecraft or one of the creepy Conan Doyle stories. Or if I was into Private Eye stuff that year, I'd be doing, Dashiell Hammett knockoffs of tough Private Eyes. You start sort of trying to do a thing, and you go from there. Because I was reading comic books and science fiction novels from a very early age, because my father just, used to, read probably a couple of dozen paperbacks a week and chuck them on the floor of his side of the bed in his and mum's bedroom. And, we'd go in there and go diving in this pile. And I can remember pulling out Robert Heinlein novels when I was 8, and you just start reading them. Didn't quite get everything, but you start reading it. So all this stuff was going into my sensitive and impressionable mind and warping it for forever. And so you just you start doing that kind of stuff. And then as you do more of it, you start realizing how bad they suck and how much you are imitating, and you need to try and find something original to do. You do that. So I'm doing that, and I'm on a steady, absolutely rock steady rock solid diet of comic books. You know,
Yeah.
my mum used to work the night shift, and she'd stop at on the newsagent on the way home to buy the paper, and then get home and wake Dad and us kids up for school. And
your dad was going to school as well.
Oh, Dad was a teacher. Yeah, well, he was, because he was a teacher.
That's funny. Was he your teacher? Like, man, was he your teacher? Like, or
no,
he was
actually, we went to a Catholic school, and he taught at a state school. But I did eventually grow up and become friends with a couple of dudes in my teens that he taught English to.
Yeah.
And you know, because some of the kids I hung around were a bit rough, I thought, oh, this is not going to be fun, you know, because they'd ask, you know, they'd get the name and they'd ask, and I'd go, yeah, and they'd go, that bloke was the only bloke who could make me understand that fucking Shakespeare. So I got a pass from that because he was, you know, reasonably well received by people my age. So that was cool. So but the comic book, I said to my mum would say, do you want anything? And I go, I saw this Green Lantern comic at the newsagent on Saturday, but I didn't have any money. Could you please buy it for me? And she goes, how on earth am I supposed to know what a Green Lantern comic book is? And so I would draw a picture for her and say, it's like this. And she would go in and take that to the newsagent, and she'd come home with that comic. You know, so she was doing this before we were allowed, you know, to get out of the house and go down and buy stuff from the newsagent ourselves. Because, of course, once that happened, once we're old enough to do that, you know, too late. It's all over. You know.
Oh yeah.
Man, the next thing we're doing is we're applying at all the local paper shops for jobs as paper boys, right? So we can have extra pocket money, and then we're spending all the pocket money on the comics at the newsagent. We're spending all the money, all our money from getting paid from the paper shop on the comics.
Well, you know, like, I guess you were fit.
That's right. And look, isn't that what they call the circular economy now, or something?
Well, that is one way of looking at it. But man, I love that story of just then that you said of like you drawing the images of the comic books for your mum, because my dad was a huge comic book fan, and the chalker side of my family come from Gundagai in New South Wales and around the Riverina and stuff. And when he was a young man, there was only playing football and reading comics. And appetite like you wouldn't believe, man. You know what I mean? And I'm lucky enough to this day to still have an awful lot of his comic books. And I hope you've got yours, you know, tucked away somewhere there too, you know, and I love hearing stories like yours, because when Dad was older, Dad used to got me into comic books, and my grandma, my mum's mum, used to support that as well. So I used to go, Gran was a pensioner, and every Thursday, a second Thursday, she used to go into the city and do her shopping. But she used to love books. So there was a book exchange there and a newsagent's across the road. And I'd get a little, you know, like, here you go on, you know, like, here's a couple of bucks, you know, whoop, see you later. And man, I'd get comic books. And then she got so used to seeing the titles. Like, here's my grandma at the time would have been, I don't know, near 70, you know what I mean? Like, and she's like on the bus, you know, like with, what did you get today, Leigh? You know, oh, the Uncanny X-Men, you know, like, and Daredevil and things like that. And when I'd get sick, my grandma used to go to the newsagents and she'd end up knowing like what issues that I had and things like that.
Oh, that is cool.
Yes, man. But
that's great.
You'd get like, here's some stuff for you to make you feel better. And it's like, whoa, that's a cool grandma. You know,
that's
like,
fantastic.
That
is really good.
I enjoy meeting a kindred spirit in that regard, man. Because you know,
Yeah, look, my parents were middle class. You know, nurse and a school teacher. As middle class, they were both really intelligent people. But like my dad, when he was at school, he got promoted twice because he was, devouring the curriculum too fast. And Mum had been top of her year 1 year. So they were pretty bright people, and they had sort of classic lefty kind of middle class things of decades ago. And fortunately, they never were snobby about the comics and thought the comics were bad for us, because, of course, that would have been a problem. But they just thought that the comics were fine and harmless and happy to see us. As I said, my dad was a big science fiction reader. So, I guess that probably was a helpful thing. They weren't sort of they weren't prudish, and they weren't didn't have a problem with comics. So the comics were allowed to reign free.
Yeah. That sounds great, man. That sounds like a wonderful household, man. You know, like
no, we're very lucky. We're very lucky.
Yeah. I can. Did you ever with your brothers? Because I had mates. You know, they're all gone now. But you know, like it's just me. But the old violin. But anyway, I'm just kidding. They're still around somewhere, you know, out there. Did you ever do weird stuff like in terms with comic books? Like, did you have like competitions where you'd choose your favorite cover and shit like that? You know what I mean? Like you'd just be bored one day and you'd have your pile of comic books and you go, "Oh, hey, what do you reckon? What's the best cover? That one. I like that one. I like that one. I like
Look,
that one."
we did all that kind of stuff, as well as did our own drawings, as well as make our own action figures. And we used to customize our action figures too. If there was no action figure of Electro or something, and we'd make one. You know, that kind of stuff. We'd make it with bits of bloody plastic electrical tape and other weird bits and bobs and stuff like that, and paint them and stuff like that. You know, to change one character to another. So look, we were crazy into it, and it was one of those things where you're reading this stuff and absorbing this with the ferocity and intensity of a kid and a teenager, and then you suddenly realise, wait a minute, and we started to do this thing where you'd pick up a comic and you'd open it to the middle, and you'd go, "That's Jack Kirby," and you go, I reckon that's John Buscema. And then, that's Sal Buscema, and that's Frank Miller. And you'd start to realise you actually knew the names of the people who were drawing all the comics. You'd actually absorbed the art styles in your brain before you'd actually purposely wanted to remember those things. That was freaky, and I guess that's part of that evolution and that sophistication of understanding the medium and going to being a casual reader to being, a true, obsessional or devotee of that art form.
Oh man, it does sort of, I guess, to an extent, ascend you to like a little bit past your mates who are the casual readers, when you can, like sit there and fully, I guess, notice like a John Romita Jr. and they say to you like, like, "No, it's not." And I'm like, "Yes, it is," and it is, like, so I know that feeling, man. They were cool days, man, those days. And then as someone who just loved that medium so much, because my dad was like really enthusiastic about it, and I had grandma piling shit on me, you know what I mean? And then I had novels, and then like, I was getting inundated. And then back when I was a kid too, you had those, man, people like get spoiled now, like we had those B grade tits and ass fantasy, like movies, man, like Beastmaster and Deathstalker and all that stuff. And you'd be down the video store getting beta cord, I might add, like, and fucking banging them out on a weekend and stuff like that. I like where you're going, because that is where I reckon that the creativity, man, is spawned in young people, is having adults that are supportive and allow your imagination to grow. And you know, if you want to paint, you paint. If you want to write, you write. If you want to draw, you draw. And I was lucky too. I mean, from the sounds of it, I can't speak for you, but from what you're saying now, like maybe you were too, and probably were, that no one ever really questioned me drawing, man. If I wanted to spend the whole day to myself, like under a tree, you know, like whimsically, you know, like drawing away or creating stories.
Look, yeah, I would agree. It's a beautiful way to spend time by yourself. You know, it's just you know, so engrossing when you're in the realm and things are working and you're not being harsh on yourself, just doing the stuff. It's a magical feeling. And then I find, you know, the same with writing, and then you come out of it and you've finished the piece to some level, some degree, or first wave of whatever. It might be first draft, or it might be, you know, first design or something, and you come out of it and you take a breath. And when you actually think there's something good here, and, you know, it might need another draft or it might need another go over with pencil or ink, I still find it difficult to top that buzz.
Yeah.
When you actually know there's something good there, and it's not just, okay, that was pretty ordinary, but when you've actually got something, no, there's something here. There's something of some degree or other of a professional standard quality here. I've managed to capture something. It feels great.
Yeah, that's I would agree, man. There's something, because there's, you know, you get, as a creative individual, you get doubts when you're in the middle of something, you know, like you do have those little things, you know, like they crawl their way in when you're halfway through something, man. You know what I mean? Like,
look, absolutely. And learning what to do when those things happen when you're doing a professional gig, learning how to get yourself out of those things is essential if you want to do any kind of professional work. Learning what to do when you either hit a blank wall or fall into a plot hole, or learning what to do, and it's a whole essay in itself, is crucial, because, of course, you don't have the luxury of putting it aside and going, I'll come back to it next month and see if I've got the answer. Because if there's a deadline, you have to solve it then. You have to have a toolkit of solutions. You know, and
what if you had it, because you just said it's an essay that, you know, may take a bit, but, you know, you can't have your whole toolkit, but you've got your, you know, like your little wallet, your backpack thingy, you know, like this is what I need to get me out of the spot, you know, a bind. What's your things, man? Like, you know, I mean, don't give away the Christopher Sequeira, you know, magic.
Oh no, look, I'm happy to give it away. I mean, you know, I'll be doing some teaching next year on some of this stuff, and that's probably an hour in itself. But look, number one is, you know, Hitchhiker's Guide, Don't Panic, but the expanded version of Don't Panic is there's a solution for everything. Right? There's a solution for everything, and the solution will be in the brief that you took when you got given the gig. So you go back to that, and it's how you apply it to that, and apply that to the problem that you've hit, and that's how you and a bunch of different solutions cascade out of analysing the original brief, and then realising I've got to find a way to meet that brief. Right? And so it's that, Don't Panic, there's an answer there somewhere. And the second thing is you gotta have confidence you can do it. And if you don't, just fake it and tell yourself you can do it and start applying the toolkit and do it, because it can be done. Like I've got it's like sometimes I got one or two people I know who write beautiful stuff, but they're very slow, right?
Yep.
And not slow like I am with drawing, where the skill's not there. They got the skill. And I talk to them, and I always find the same thing comes up when I talk to them. They try and make every sentence perfect before they move on to the next sentence. Don't ever do that.
Yeah.
Right? What you got to do is you got to get a first draft down. It doesn't matter how rough it is or how bad it is, because you're the only one that's going to see it. It's what you do on the second and third and fourth passes. And you can write really professional scripts in 3 passes, just 3 passes, if you get your toolkit sorted. And you trust yourself, if you believe in yourself. But if you try and make every sentence perfect before you get the next one done, you'll never, your work will be painfully slow, and you're just choking all your creativity.
Yeah. So you're obviously a very intuitive creator and writer. From the sounds of things, you can feel like if something's working.
Look, I am, but I've spent a lot of years being critical of my stuff, and also I spent a lot of years just reading a lot on the diagnostics of writing and the advice of books on writing, not just comics, because there's very few of those, but just books on writing by good writers that have been successfully commercially published, so you know that they know what they're talking about. And whether it's novels, short stories, or screenplays, when you pick up those books, the tools you'll get out of any of those ones where people who've got an actual career, they'll just, I mean, J. Michael Straczynski's written a couple of fantastic books about writing. I heartily recommend those. And there's several others. David Morrell wrote something. I forgot what it's called. Another great book, the guy who created Rambo. So, there's read books, that make that part of your lifelong education. Don't just read other stuff. Read books by good writers on how to write. And you'll pick up
every lesson to what you're doing at a certain time.
And you'll just and you just keep adding to your toolkit. Because you'll read something, you go, oh, I'm doing that, and that works. Then you go, I'm not doing that. I've got to try that. And then you may find that works beautifully for you and unlocks another dimension of the craft.
Yep. Do you find yourself constantly evolving? You've never...
Oh, yeah. Look, I'm not happy with something I wrote last week, right? I'm not happy with something I wrote last week, but I can live with it, because I can go, well, I'm a week older than I was then, so can't beat yourself up because of what I learned this week. And as long as it's not too quick, and occasionally you do something. I mean, my first Rattlebone story was like a 3 or 4 pager in the pages of Fantastique magazine. What happened was I'd written and drawn this story myself. We're talking about drawing. I wrote and drew the whole story. And I took it into the Fantastique guys, and one of the guys, Des Waterman, looked at it and said, this is really cool. I love this weird, ghoulish character with a creepy face, but I hate your artwork. Can I redraw the whole story panel for panel myself? And I said, shit, because Des was a great artist. And so, I created the whole thing, the character, the concept, the visuals, but he just said, for this first story, we want to run it, but I'll draw it. And he drew it, and he did a knockout job. Knocked it out of the park. Amazing. Had his own unique, beautiful stylings. And And that story I still like. That's one of the first things I had published, if not the first thing I had published. And I can still read that without cringing because it was just this really distilled, 4-page, and it was all about style. It was all about the vibe in that 4 pages, and I was trying to, create a cross between, Sam Spade from the Maltese Falcon and a character, that was like, Vincent Price out of House of Wax, or Dr. Fives, a ghoulish, hideous character, and with almost a cheeky Vincent Price 60s TV kind of cheesy sort of sense of humour. So I sort of blending a few different things together there, and it just all came out. It all was perfectly distilled, and Des picked up exactly on what I was trying to do. As I said, I'd actually drawn the whole thing in black and white, full size art, and he made it look good instead of shit. And I don't hate that story even after many years, because I sort of got it right the first time.
Yeah. That's. Do you go back and look at these things sometimes? Do you get a little bit sentimental?
Normally, I don't have time, so I'll do it. Yeah, if I was, rummaging around in an old box looking for something, and came across an old comic, I would. But otherwise, I don't normally do.
I love your enthusiasm for all of this, man. It's awesome.
Got to be, look, mate. It's about the work. It's all about the story. It's not even about me. It's about the story. The story lives forever. I won't.
So essentially, I guess from that comment there is like you're not really putting your ego into the work. You're doing what's coming out of you naturally, fluidly, to what your vision is, and you're passing it on to the artist.
Look. Yes and no, and I do need to pick up on that.
Yeah.
I've got a very healthy ego.
Right? Fair.
I got a very healthy ego, and people have been known to remember, seeing the effects of my ego. But my ego is not about me. My ego is about the story, right? If I wrote the story and I hand it in, and the editor or publisher approves it, then that's the story. That's the story they asked for. They said that's what we want. Because, of course, they'll ask for changes here and there along the way before the final version, and I always make those. I just did a 4-issue Star Trek series for IDW, and that was very heavily edited because you've got IDW and you've got Paramount as well, and they're looking at and taking notes on it, right? And so there's quite a few, probably minimum 2 passes on notes back and forth, except one issue I think I got 0 notes, I think, or very few. And you've got to address them all. And some of them are just straightforward continuity notes. Yeah. Right. The continuity boffins are gone. But is that guy still in, on the Enterprise D at this point in time in season 6, or are we in season 7? And can we pick a star date for this? It's got to be between this and this. And so you've got to respond to all of that. Yeah. And then some of it is the whole story. But didn't we, if he's doing that, why would he be doing that? And sometimes they change the position from the broad original position where this was going to be dealt with this from a plot perspective. But then by the time we got into issue 2 or something, it was like, well, let's not do that with it because there's some problems if we do that. Could we come up with a solution? And I go, just leave it with me. And I think I write it right up and go, okay, let's have this be the thing behind that, or this be the technology reason behind that. How's that go? Yeah, that's great. That's what we're talking about. You've got us out of that problem, and that's totally fine. But once it's approved, right?
Yeah.
Then that's the thing, you know. And then if somebody comes back and draws something completely different, which has happened in, my many years of doing this thing, I'm starting to sort of think, well, hang on a minute, that's not a writer problem. That's an editor-artist problem, and they should go and figure that one out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll try and do something like re-letter. And I've done things for publishers like the artist hasn't drawn what they're supposed to draw, and so, can you change the script and the lettering? But I'll go, yeah, and I'll try and help get a solution. But there's a point there where I say, well, that's not me. It's, you've got to do, if you want him to redraw it, that's what you've got to tell him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that can happen. So yeah, I got a healthy ego in that respect. But if it's commercial writing, you're writing to a brief. If it's creator owned, of course, I can do whatever the hell I want.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
As long as my publisher's happy. But
Yeah.
in those cases, there's two kinds of creator owned. There's creator owned where I'm co-owning it with an artist, and then those are interesting, and those are really powerful because then we're just working together, solving problems, and it's never about me versus anybody. It's about me and that person together versus the world.
Mm-hmm.
And people I've worked with in really close quarters to a dedicated outcome where they've been happy to tell me, nah, that sucks, Chris, and I've been happy to tell them, nah, that sucks, mate. People like Chewy Chan, people like Jan Scherpenhausen, people like Kurt Stone. And again, it's about making the thing at best it can be. And I've done a lot of writing with one of my brothers, Jonathan, who's a filmmaker. We've worked on a few film things, and we could do that. We could do co-writing on stuff, and we can argue the toss on something, and it can get really full on. But it's never actually, the heat's not me to him or him to me. There's no heat like that. It's just, why is that not as good as it could be? Why is that not a great intro for that character? God, that can be better, and because all those kind of things are about a journey, again, to make the best version of the story.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the journey there. Now, journeys working with people, collaborations like the best bands, I guess, down to chemistry and things like that. You can't describe the chemistry. It just seems to work. Sometimes I would assume that the most unlikely alliances can form the best bonds, perhaps. Have you had happy discoveries along those lines where, regardless of your enthusiasm, which is, again, most obvious to me, and I'm absolutely resonating with your enthusiasm, have you ever had that moment where you're a little bit, I'm not real sure, but I'm going to give it a go, see where it takes me. The universe has opened this door. I'm going to walk through it. Nothing's stopping me. I'll give it a go. And those trepidations are just gone. And you're just on a natural, high, man. Have you ever had one of those moments?
Look, I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky that very few of those kind of the journeys and collaborations have left me unhappy or unsatisfied. Very, very tiny percent. So most of them have either been as good as what I'd hoped or incredibly better, but they started off with good expectations anyway. I'm just trying to think, did I have any where I was thinking, oh, this is probably not going to be great, and it was great. I'm just trying to think. No, look, I don't think I've had any that I thought were going to be difficult, and then and and then they turned out to be. I think most of the time I have really optimistic expectations. I have sort of fairly hey, we're doing comics again, so it's it's going to be good.
I've noticed, like, because we're talking, and
wait a minute. I'll give you something, mate. I'll give you one super pleasant surprise.
yeah.
Okay.
Hit me. Not literally, but hit me.
I did an X-Men story for Marvel several years ago, and it was an 8-pager in the X-Men versus Vampires miniseries.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I wrote the script and handed it in, and I had no knowledge who they were going to assign it to. And they assigned it to the Japanese artist Sana Takeda, the one who won all those awards for Monstrous.
Mm-hmm.
And the 8 pages of artwork that floated back in my inbox from the editor was just like a jolt of electricity. They were beautiful. Not only were they beautiful, the storytelling was crystal clear, portrayed my story exactly the way it was on the script, captured all the emotional moments and the page turn bits of action that I was after. And, there was a whole cast of brand new characters introduced. You probably never read it. Basically, I introduced into the Marvel Universe a secret 1970s sect of San Francisco disco club vampires.
Oh,
and because, of course, everyone needs one. So,
indeed.
So I created them, and I had ideas for models for all the characters in this crew of vampires. They're called Studio 13, right? And Sana's artwork came back, and I was just floating. Mate, because it was so beautiful. And then a few years later, I was at a San Diego Comic Con, and I got to meet her and thank her for the amazing work that she did. Yeah, lovely person.
That is amazing, man. Were you ever lucky enough to get any of those original pages or anything like that?
No, would have been a bit too rich for my pocket, mate.
Oh, they couldn't have slipped you one, mate. Just as just as hey, champ, good on you. Look at what we did here, like bit of a bugger, but like I guess people have got to eat, mate. You know what I mean? It's like got to pay the bills, so it's like that's how it is. I love hearing those stories. Like, was that from what you're talking to me there? Because you just sort of said previously that sometimes you work with people to nut it out, and like you're not really fighting, but you're trying to get the best out of something to make something good. You know what I mean? When you do a script like that and you send it off into the ether, man, and like it's out there, and then an artist you may be familiar with, you haven't had too much to do with, of them, but then like in that case there, you're not really sure what's going to come back, and beauty comes back. Did you find, was it a case of was there communication between the two of you, or was it really
No, as though that one was just a really efficient Marvel editorial team?
Yeah.
Led by the main editor I was working for, who was there at Marvel at the time, was Janine Schaefer. And super organized, super efficient. They made sure that all the dots were dotted, and the crosses were crossed before the script went to Sana. So any issues with wordage or anything like that was all fixed in the script. So what Sana got was a perfectly clean, go for it, woman script, and she went for it and knocked it out of the park.
That's a beautiful thing. Now, on the editing, because we've mentioned it a couple of times, varying people that like I've spoken to and stuff like that, and the what what importance, Chris, as someone that has edited, has been edited, has, like gone from the ground level of, self-producing your own comic books, man, stapling them, as we discussed earlier. I love, because people, we get caught up in the writing and the art, and that sort of thing. But we don't, I find that there's little conversation in regards to the importance of an editor, or an editorial team, man, in the creation of comic books. What magic can an editor bring for those that don't know?
Look, in commercial publishing, there's really two strands to being an editor, in most senses. One is project management, and the other one is understanding quality and story and the commercial realities of the publishing that you're doing. Okay, so the project management is everything you'd see. You got to figure out. So someone's got to write it first and then draw it, and the timelines, and the traffic management of the pages and the lettering and the artwork and the colours and the print proofs and blah blah blah. So there's all that.
Yep. And
the interpersonal skills, both written and verbal, involved in managing a process through diverse pairs of hands as it goes on its merry way to pre-press.
Yep.
So there's that. And then the second is, okay, if I'm editing a comic, it's no different to editing a short story in the sense that you bring your artistic lens to bear on what you're doing. So I've got to read the script just like I'd read a prose short story for an anthology I'm putting together.
Yeah.
Does it meet the brief? Is it suitable for the audience? Is it good? Is it doing what it appears to need to be doing? Is the writer fulfilling, what we need? No use giving me a 20-page chapter for a comic book script if it's for a four-part 80-page story, unless something bloody happens in the first 20 pages. And modern comics, they want a fair bit to happen in the first 20 pages, and we can't shoot all our rockets in chapter 1. This story's got to build across 4 issues. So is he sticking or is she sticking to their outline with the gradual dramatic build-up? So those might be. So the kind of notes I give on a comic book script might be, that's great, but what's that scene really doing?
Yep.
And could we put an action scene in there again? I know you want to have this guy lock horns with this guy. Or maybe we can illustrate that conflict a bit more and give this, then this issue, and then lead this issue up to this point, and that might be a page turner, and then that fulfills the promise of your premise.
Yeah.
Right? So you have those kinds of conversations, and I can work with quite experienced people and still give notes. I've worked with, major published short story writers in the US and gone, okay, that one, are you aware that there's you're trying to do something there, but you're also trying to do something there. There's those bits are fighting with each other a bit. What are your thoughts on that? And look, you don't tell people how to fix stuff if they're a professional writer. You just say, okay, I'm seeing an issue here. What do you think? You're the writer, I trust you. Do you have a solution to that?
Yeah.
And
so you're gentle. You just nudge them.
Well, look, I don't want to tell them how to fix stuff, right? Unless it's something like, we need a shot of somebody running across London Bridge and they've drawn the Golden Gate Bridge by mistake, then you say it's the wrong bridge, right? And would you mind please just going back? To my eye, they've gone London Bridge. They should have gone Hammersmith Bridge, right? Okay, whatever, all right? I don't want to be doing that. But if I got to do that, I'll do that. And that's a straightforward, by the way, okay. But if it's a story kind of thing, you want to say, here's the problem I'm observing. What do you think?
Yeah.
And I am absolutely 100% happy for a short story writer or a novelist, like I edited Louis Lowry's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in America, and there was a number of conversations Louis and I had on that. And Louis was a fantastic writer who died last year. And I miss him heaps already because it was a brilliant book, right? But you work through them, and look, because you're good, you don't tell him how to solve it. You go, maybe it could be, you know, what needs to reset it or to fix that imbalance. You know, what do you think? What can you come up with? And you have to do that, you know, because 9 times out of 10, you know, a Chris Sequeira solution to a Louis Lowry problem is never going to be as good as a Louis Lowry solution to a Louis Lowry problem.
Yeah. Understood. And it also, I guess, to a certain extent, man, there's an element of, with the gentle nature of how you handle that process, you also don't affect the writer's ego or confidence in allowing themselves to take time to, you know, visualize, process what you've just said, and attack it from a fresh angle, and, you know, like, create a solution.
Yeah, look, because that's not professional. Look, I'll be honest, I've been an arsehole to people when they've been an arsehole. When they've been an arsehole to me first. Right?
Have you ever had anyone, right? Just no names, but, you know, and, you know, everyone's been there, so no, we're cool. Have you ever had, you know, you've gone into the process and you've gone, you know, just wanted it, like the Chris Sequeira has just gone in there and done it, played it his way about presenting possible thought processes to make something better, and the person on the other end of the line going, funny around a friend, paper's gone and they're out the door. Have you ever had anyone do that to you?
Well, look, I was doing a book some years ago. I wasn't doing it on my own. I was doing it with some other people, and somebody had it was a multiple contributor book, and somebody had a very bizarre explosion like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
To this day, we still don't exactly understand what their issue was. We don't even know what the issue was. Right? But we tried to get to the bottom of that, and we couldn't unpack it with them any further.
Yeah.
And we said, look, no worries. You know, you're absolutely a free spirit. Then, you know, you go your way totally happily. And, yeah, that's it. And then they come back and fire another rocket at us. And that's when I was an arsehole. And I said, right, you know, you didn't want to do this and you didn't want to do that, and the way you did it wasn't really cool, right? And then we said, okay, that's cool. If you want to go off and do your own thing, that's also cool. And nothing bad about that. And now you want to come back and have a free shot at us, you don't get that. And so, yeah, that ended with a very decisive statement from editorial position.
Yeah, fair enough.
I think to this day, that was some kind of weird anomaly, and there was something going on in that person's life, and they'd already decided they wanted to blow that up.
Yep.
And that's okay. That happens. You know.
Yeah.
But do they get to take a kick at my co-editors' heads? No, they don't.
No, that's fair enough, man. That's fair enough.
And look, that's normal. That's normal, right? It's like you go in the bloody, you go to McDonald's and they give you a burger with a fly in it. This is a hypothetical example. McDonald's, don't sue me because it never happens at your beautiful burger place, right? But if you go in there, you got a fly in the burger, you go back and say, I'm sorry. They'll usually go, no worries, we'll give you a refund, and you don't make a scene about it. You don't be an idiot about it, right? You accept that, you know, flies get in the grill, right, when no one's looking. and you sort it out, happy, you walk on. But, you know, if then somebody wants to start blowing up at somebody else,
Yep.
you know, disproportionate, for that gains, nobody gains anything.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, will I stand there and be a punching bag? I won't.
Yep. 100% fair, man. 100% fair. From a personal and an editorial perspective. So I think that's...
Now, having said that, another really important thing is I actually love it when people fight for their position and say, I don't want to change, and I think I can convince you why.
Yeah.
That's totally cool. Like I've done a few things over the years with Jan Scherpenhausen, and sometimes Jan's come to me and we've been talking about a cover design or a page of art, and Jan said to me, look, I really don't think this particular layout or the sequence on this page is going to work and is right. And I'll show you why. Or I'll tell you why. And it's the opposite of what I wanted. And he's gone and told me, and I've gone, you're totally right, I'm wrong. Your way sounds really cool, heaps better. Let's do it your way.
Yep.
You know? And
that would also be that beautiful chemistry that we were talking about before.
Look, that's just what that is. That's just professional respect. And it's not about you know, not being Gandalf going, you know, your changes shall not pass. Right? It's not about
Oh man, you're playing to my heart there. I'm an old Lord of the Rings fan, man. That was one of the first books I ever read. Stop it, man.
Yeah, but it should never be. You should never be so precious. You should always be at least able to take it in.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And because if you don't take it in, you know, then that's a terrible sign that you're one of those writers and you're on a slippery slope down and out of a career.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you've got to have, and this is key, you've got to have that some sort of level of constant humility, not fear and paranoia that you might always be wrong, but humility that you could do it better. So that you cannot be taking criticism and feedback and notes, you can't be taking them personally. And if you do a lot of reading on screenwriting, they talk about this as the death knell to so many movie script writers' careers. Either stops them from getting started, or they start, you know, making a few $100,000 sales, and then they start getting asked to make changes by the producers, and they start being difficult or refused. And then they wonder they never get to work in that town again.
Yeah.
Because again, it's not about you. Saying, I really don't like this scene, Chris, right? I really don't like that paragraph, Chris, is not saying, I really don't like you, Chris.
Yep.
That's not what they're saying.
Yep.
They're saying this isn't as good as it could be.
Yep.
You know, and if you get to a point where no, I've sold enough stuff, I think I'm good. You know, I don't need to listen to other people. You're slowly dying. You're the Walking Dead already.
Yeah. Understood.
So it's a constant balancing act.
Yeah.
But look, I've been very lucky. You know, I've worked with some amazing people in Australia. I've been, you know, truly blessed to work with them. You know, dozens of amazing Aussies. You know, who can both write and draw. Especially they can write, certainly write rings around me, and I've got to work with them, and that's been a privilege.
Yeah. No, it's man, Australia's got some powerhouse talent, I think.
Yeah, look, I think there's another wave coming, I reckon.
Yeah. Oh man, just in the small time that you know, like I've been in the ocean, man, you know, like the people and the things that, you know, not only the folks that I'm aware of, you know, like, but the constant flow of new things and visions and styles and
you've probably seen, you've probably seen that references here and there to that Super Australians book.
I have.
That's a jam book of 26 artists and writers that I've worked on.
Yeah.
Now we're going to actually get that published internationally next year, starting off with doing a 4-issue comic shop run internationally for Colour Comics, and then collecting it as a trade. Just in that, the bloody talent that popped up in that, right?
Yeah.
You know, and the diversity of styles and the diversity of ideas for narrative and stuff like that. You know, it's just, you know, that book is just mental. Absolutely mental. That's just scratching the surface. That was just 26 people that we scrounged together through personal contacts, mostly a few years back. And it's multiplied, you know, like crazy since then.
That's exciting, man. It's good. It's you know, because the one thing I guess as
can I do a shout out?
You absolutely can.
Julie Dietrich, who a lot of people know, is a very talented writer and editor, and does various other you know, functions in the world of comics. Suggested I talk to this woman called Ana Maria Mendez Salgado for Super Australians. And I knew nothing about the lady, and I contacted her and worked and invited her to do one of the chapters of Super Australians with another person I didn't know, a young writer from the Northern Territory, John O. Saunders. So he wrote and created a superhero, and she co-created and drew that superhero, designed that superhero, and they did a chapter, and it was in a style like nothing you've ever seen for a superhero comic. It's like this weird picture book, animated, illustrated kids book, ethereal, pastel, beautiful 6-page chapter. Jono wrote it, Ana Maria drew it. And it is one of the most astonishing distilled pieces of creativity in the comics world I've had the pleasure to be associated with. And she was quite nervous because she's a great artist and does animation and stuff like that. She hadn't really tackled the comics thing, right? And Jono was a little bit more confident. He'd done some script writing and whatnot, but he hadn't done a lot of comics at that stage. And, you know, forget bloody Chris Sequeira, mate. You know, that chapter in that book was a standout. There were several standout chapters in that one. But that's bloody a privilege and alchemy to put a couple of people together and to work with Jono on the script and work with her and give her notes on the art and all the rest of it. Not much in either case because they're bloody gifted geniuses, right? And the end result was something beautiful and unique. And, you know, as sometimes with the short story collections I do, I get a short story in either from a big name, like a Jonathan Marbury or a Nancy Holder or a lesser known, you know, person. And, you know, you just get it and you read it and you just go, this is gorgeous. This is that particular version of the art form, the comic book or the short story. And it's just a cracker. And, you know, I got to help get that out into the world. And I should get no thanks for it getting out into the world in terms of creative responsibility, but I did my project management and I did maybe a little bit of, you know, creative feedback and kibitzing along the way. And, yeah, those successes are really sweet, mate, to actually, well, I created a conduit for that thing to go out in the world and have a commercial home.
Magic.
Oh, yeah, it's truly magic.
Yeah, that's awesome. That was obviously another one of those moments, like when you got your 8 pages back, that, you know, like gave you some electricity, man, and fueled your fire to keep going with everything. I now we're gonna just I like doing sound effects, Chris. I found that sound effects sometimes when I lack articulation, because like sometimes I just can't think of a word to say. I find that sound effects often stand in quite well. So today's sound effect for moving to another point is all right. So next fortnight it could change. I don't know, but for now that's what it is. I was a little bit not nervous, but I have watched your career, so I'm aware that you do lots of things.
I'm glad to see. I'm glad to see you're still awake.
I'm right here, man. I'm absolutely.
If you watched my career, mate, I'm glad you didn't induce narcolepsy.
Mate, well, I'm a bit of an insomniac anyway, so it's like I got
to just as well.
Yes, that's right, mate. So your careers come in handy from time to time. But look, but on like, mate, you do. I want to talk to you because I'm most interested in like your public speaking and stuff that you do too. Like you go over to places like your San Diego Comic Cons and varying other places, and discuss, I guess, what we're talking about here and the beauty of comic books and stuff like that. At what point in your writing career or comic book involvement did you decide that you wanted to do that sort of segue?
Look, that's a really easy natural outgrowth out of doing comics, doing panels at comic conventions and talks and other things. It just flows out of that. I mean, I actually did one a couple of months ago. I got called up by a school library in Sydney, and the teacher, one of the librarians, had one of my anthologies, actually a couple of my anthologies in the school library.
Yeah.
And said, would you come and talk to the girls? Right? And I said, great, And I went out and did, that was the lunchtime speaker. And I just spoke to them about writing and writing genre in Australia and an international market and whatnot. And it was great. It was really enjoyable. So it's sort of a combination. As you've seen the last 1.5 hours, I got a bloody big mouth. Right, I can talk under wet cement, and I don't mind sharing, as you've identified. I don't mind sharing my enthusiasm.
I love people that are enthusiastic, Chris, about things that I'm passionate about also, and don't ever stress while you're talking to me on Chinwag about enjoying a chat, because those that know me well also know that one of the nicknames that my loving friends gave me over the years was Shit Talker Chalker. So I have also been known to enjoy, just having a yarn, mate. Which is
Like, I probably developed that facility, mate, because I'm the eldest of 9 children, so. You don't talk, mate. You too bad. You don't get heard.
Yeah.
You don't speak. You don't speak up. No one. There's no hope.
Yeah, 1 of 9 children, man. Like, that's the only thing I can tell you. We're on the end scale of, because for look, man. Up until last year, I always thought that I guess to a certain extent had understood that I was pretty much an only child, and then found out that I knew of many years ago, but it wasn't until September last year that I came in contact with my long lost sister. And
cool.
And in a really weird segue, I also would like to give a shout out to Alex, and I would also like to give a shout out to my lovely little niece who turned 1 on.
That is so good.
So yeah, I just wanted to make a shout out there because that's weird that we were talking about that. But there you go, Alex and G. I hope you had a lovely weekend and lots of love.
Lovely.
Now, man, let's go on to your new project, your
Okay.
your new company, your new thing that you're
All
part of. Take me away, man, because I
Okay,
don't know
so
much
look-
about it, but I've seen you starting to rev it up a bit, man. So
look, oh yeah, I've got two. I'm on two tracks, in parallel these days. I've got my own personal writing career, which is still writing short stories.
yeah,
Still writing comic books and these stories and comics will be for whatever publishers around the world are interested. Okay,
Yeah.
so I still do that. The Star Trek thing that's on sale at the moment.
Yeah.
Issue 3 comes out this week. Star Trek Halloween, people.
Yeah.
Star Trek Hollow-Ween. Issue 3 goes out this week. It's a 4-issue mini-series, Halloween themed. You're going to love it. So there's things like that. But several years ago, I sold a couple of anthology ideas to a small publisher based in Melbourne called IFWG Publishing. And they produced books and actually distributed them to bookstores all over the world, including America. They weren't just a digital or a print-on-demand publisher. They actually had proper distribution.
Yeah.
Okay, and they did genre, fantastic. And I had a couple of genre projects I was looking for a home for, and they picked them up. And then over a period of time, one of the projects that I placed with them was a series I co-edited with Steve Proposh and Bryce Stevens called Cthulhu Deep Down Under. Now, as it turned out, we ended up doing 4 volumes of Cthulhu Deep Down Under because we did 3 Aussie set ones, and Jerry Huntman, the owner, was mobbed by a bunch of New Zealand writers who said, could we contribute stories to a New Zealand set version of this? And he said to me and Bryce and Steve, would you edit that if I set that up and paid you to do that? And we said, love it. Yeah. And so we did it. The 4th one was called Cthulhu Land of the Long White Cloud. Right? So we did 4 volumes. So I was doing more and more stuff for Jerry. And then I started coming up with more ideas for Jerry. And I was having up ideas for marketing and where we could promote these things. And I was sort of doing lots of little in-between kind of things. And he basically said, do you want to become a senior editor? So I'll give you things. I've got this book, a couple of novels I need someone to edit and work with the writers on. And one of them is the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in America, that terrific book, and a couple of other things. And so I just ended up doing more and more for him. And then he said to me a few years ago, would you set up a comics division for me? Because I'm thinking, and I said to him, I was just about to incorporate and do that myself. I said, but I'll send you the ideas I was going to do. And if they can be part of the eventual pipeline, then I'll abandon my plans and I'll do it for you. And I sent him the projects that were underway, and he said, we would publish those in a heartbeat. And I said, good, look, I'll bring them over to you. I'll bring the artists with me, and we'll do some stuff. And it went from there. So basically, I've spent the last few years, he and I have been doing a ton of preparation, scouting for work from the right type of creators with the right type of projects that fit our brand, our genre brand, the right kind of budgets for a newly emerging publisher. And we started doing all the logistical stuff on how are we going to get these distributed in the United States, right? Because there's no point doing this unless you can get them in the comic shops all over the world. So we've been on that journey and doing discussions, contracts with creators, project plans, legal stuff, financial stuff, and We've gone over the US and had meetings with distributors to try and iron out, wrinkles there. We've been talking to printers internationally, and we're now at the stage where the first few books should be hitting the shelves in the first months of next year. And we've got, I'll give you the exclusive, brother.
All right.
So there's 2 books, 2 monthly comics miniseries that are going to come out in the first tranche. One is the final expanded, fully super duper, whole new chapter's worth of material, Super Australians, which will be going out under the brand of a brand new comic book called Superhumanity. It'll be called Superhumanity, and Volume 1, the first storyline, will be drastically expanded Super Australians, heaps of new artwork and cool new stuff. First time it will have been available outside, the trade paperback that we did for trade shows in Australia a few years ago. Yep. First time it's finally going out to the world. The pandemic and other things got in the way, but this is better. We were able to bring this and make this one of them. The second one, do you know Hayden Fryer?
I don't know him personally, but I do know of the gentleman's existence, and I've seen his art.
We were absolutely thrilled to sign and pick up what I call a bush horror book of his, an original bush horror concept called Bristlemouth, a Cove Horror. And it's basically, your Evil Dead spam in a cabin thing, but nothing like the cliches of that kind of genre. It's a really emotionally engaging, quite poetic and lyrical kind of story with this beautiful black and white wash tone artwork, and a really unusual and interesting protagonist. And this absolutely demented and weird design of hideous predators attacking the poor people. And it's different. It's classic, but it's different. So Bristlemouth, so those 2 comics, they'll be comics, and then they'll get collected as trade paperbacks 3 to 6 months later. Are the first 2 books we're having coming out. They will debut in the same month, and what we're planning on debuting in the same month is Volume 1 of a completely, not completely, but a significantly revised version of Queenie Chan's manga series, The Dreaming, which this is revised. This hasn't been in print for 12 years or something. Yeah. We bought the rights off Tokyo Pop, and we're bringing it back to the world. That'll be a new volume every 4 or 6 months or something, and there's going to be a whole brand new Volume 4, cover to cover, brand new material. But each edition has new. So they're the sort of first, and we'll also do a re-release to comic shops of my co-edited short story collection with stories by Jim Kruger, Colin Duran, Neil Gaiman, George R.R. Martin, Jonathan Marbury, Joe Lansdale. You might have heard of some of these people.
I'm vaguely familiar with a few of them, mate.
Yeah, it's called Caped Fear Superhuman Horror Stories. And it's all short stories by the creme de la creme of science fiction and horror. So short stories about superheroes in horror settings. So those books will all launch around the same time together. And it's all part of IPI Comics, which is ipicomics.com. And you'll see we've got other cool stuff coming. We've got rocker Steve Kilby from The Church with 2 collaborators, Nicole Madanick and artist Keith Donald, have done an astonishing sword and sorcery fantasy called Veil of Tears. That is just amazing. The first issue artwork came in the other week as mind-blowing. So that's going to be a 4-parter. We've got the Human Fly, the 70s Marvel character. We're going to be doing new adventures of him. I'll be writing it, but also Jim Kruger and Dana Brewer, an American writer who's written for TV and stuff. She's going to be doing some stories in that. Artwork's going to be by Jan Sherpenhausen, and covers are going to be by Chewy Chan. And we are in negotiations. SU not, we are in genuine negotiations with one of the biggest comic book cover artists of the industry to do a cover.
Awesome.
So, because he likes this character, he wants to do it.
So
yeah. That's going to be an ongoing. And it's going to be a complete modernisation of that old real-life stuntman, stunt show comic that Marvel licensed for a year and a half in the late 70s. So we're just going to be melding fact and fiction and doing a sort of a meta-fictional contemporary action book. And I'm really looking forward to it. So we're doing a whole bunch of different stuff. I'm getting to be the editor-in-chief of my own comics company for Jerry. And again, part of the joy is getting this Hayden Fryer book that's just magnificent, mate. Leigh, it's just beautiful. Or Queenie's thing, which people have been wanting to see come back for years. This is just a privilege and a joy to put this stuff out there and get it in front of an international audience, because we have distribution to the comic shops, and we've had distribution for trade paperbacks to normal bookstores for 12 years.
Yep.
Now we'll have double the distribution channels. You can go to any book that sells graphic novels, any bookshop that sells graphic novels, but every comic shop can get it if they get graphic novels as well. So it'll be good. So we sort of got a mix of Aussies and Americans.
Yeah.
Another book that's, if you go to our website, you'll see Jason Franks from Melbourne and Tam Nation from Sydney are doing this killer thing that we did a preview at some conventions called the Frankenstein Monstrance. And basically, a lot of people would know Jason's stuff. He's a brilliant Aussie novelist and comics guy. And it's a high octane, what if Victor Frankenstein was a rogue tech billionaire? And the artwork by Tam Nation, people haven't seen, artwork this schmick in a while. Yeah, mm-hmm. This guy came to me from movies and said, I hear you're the comics guy, I'm friends with your brother, can we have a cup of coffee? Showed me this portfolio, and I just went, man, you want to do comics? I said, this stuff is amazing. I said, and the sensibilities that Tam has, the kind of things he's into, I said, how about I just let you talk to Jason Franks, a friend of mine? And they came back and said, we'd like to sell you this co-owned idea that we now have for the two of us. And it was magic. So, yeah, really exciting, mate, because, again, I don't get any credits for the story or art on that. I just get credits for the guy that's helping getting it to market. And I look, in some of the stuff, we have a particular mentality about what projects we pick. We pick stuff that we think has got a decent chance to sell. It's got a decent chance that people go, I like that. I want a sequel. Can you guys do another 4 issues graphic novel, a year later or 2 years later? And we also pick stuff where we think that could be a streaming or a feature film. Because we're small and we're young in terms of comics publishing. So we've got to do the sensible things to make these things have a chance of selling and bringing the rewards in extra royalties to the creators. So, that's big. There's also a really fresh, and I mean fresh, because I've read 50,000 vampire stories, because that used to be one of my obsessions, which is what Pulse of Darkness was about, vampires, right? And we got a take on vampires. A guy called Alan Phillipson wrote a short story in the anthology that I edited, Dracula Unfanged, about alternate takes on Dracula. Alan wrote this killer story called War with the Mafia. So a Dracula story called War with the Mafia. A vampire story called War with the Mafia. And it was killer. And I took it to Jerry and said, this comics thing you want to start? this short story is like issue 1 of an absolute killer of a comic book series. And he read it and said, you're right. And so Alan partnered up with the great horror writer, novelist Nancy Holder, are doing the comic with John K. Snyder, who's drawn for DC, lots of cool stuff, doing the artwork, and it's fantastic. So and that's called They Call Me Midnight.
Mate.
So we got some great stuff, and look, mate, it's got nothing to do with me. This is those people's talents, and I just get to be the lucky bugger to help work out the timetables, the contracts, and the deals, and set them free, get out of their way so, they can write what they write and draw what they draw, and only give them a nudge if they think they need it. And that's very exciting, mate. Man,
I'm excited listening to you, watching your excitement, man, discussing these projects. You know what I mean? Like, I wonder, I had a little thought process while I was listening to you there, and it took me back to you discussing your childhood earlier in the show, and your enthusiasm and the wonderful family that you had that encouraged your creativity and stuff like that. And I guess as I begin to wind down our show for the evening, Chris, one thing that I always like to ask people is why. And I guess I'm going to go back to what I was saying was the little fella, little Chris, that was sitting there drawing his books with his brothers, magic, having fun, enthusiasm. The garden in the brain is just growing, fertile. You've had these magic moments, man, through your life and your career. And now I'm looking at you smiling like a Cheshire cat from ear to ear as you discuss what you've been working on, what you've attracted to you in terms of the creative talent and that you've brought to you to allow them to come together and go out into their own world and bring stories to readers. Is the Chris that's sitting here talking to me now, I guess, would the little Chris be happy and proud of where big Chris is right now?
Look, I think little Chris would be thinking, well, that's what you're supposed to be doing, because that's what I'm doing. So, it's good that you haven't stopped, because why would you stop? Why would you stop? And I guess that's the me, is like, can't stop. Got to keep doing it. Got to keep trying to do it better. Got to keep trying to figure it. And look, it's a great, especially when I'm not just doing stuff for myself, because like I still pitch all the time. I got things firing off to editors all around the world all the time, and some of them come to me and some don't. I mean, the Star Trek book that I've done that I'm very, very proud of, right? That came about because another project with that same publisher had been greenlit and was all set to go ahead, but then due to an external situation, it wasn't able to go ahead. But I can tell you that would have sold like about 10 times what Star Trek Holodeck's going to, because it was something unique and weird and big.
Yeah.
And I'm never short of ideas, but sometimes the universe is not ready for an idea, or the universe has got to wait. So stuff goes around. And so I never get bored. I've got ideas for 10, 20 anthologies more. And a couple of them I'm working on with a fantastic editor called Steve Paulson. I got another one working on with Steve Propos that we're hoping to announce very, very soon, with some brilliant Aussie writers like Alan Baxter and oh, gone blank, Janine Webb and other people like that. So I've always got stuff cooking, so that'll always happen. But yeah, it's so that part of me, that little kid, yeah, he's seeing exactly what he wants to see. Is I'm still doing it. Yeah, I'm still doing it. Just as, and you go in the world of the characters, and it was actually one of the coolest things of writing the 4 issues of Star Trek, and this was for a wonderful editor, a woman named Heather Antos, who is the most professional editor I've ever worked for. She's fantastic. And I've worked, for some great work. I've worked for Paul Levitz at DC. I've worked for Steve Wacker. I've worked for Dan Rasper, formerly of DC. Janine Schaefer I mentioned. But Heather was just amazing. Super professional, on the ball, feedback notes, just insane. But best thing about doing that script was, all those scripts was, so I had you block out the plot. When it came to doing the script of the whole 20 pages, I found the best way to do it in this particular case was I wrote all the panel descriptions for the whole book first. I didn't write a line of dialogue. I just had the panels, and I'm going, and in this panel they're going to say this, and she's going to say this to him, and that'll be a 2-shot between Worf and Deanna, and and I blocked the whole thing out, and then I went back and did all the dialogue in one pass, and did that last before I turned the script in, because I love that show, and I just went into a trance, right? Caffeine only, people, caffeine only. I went into a trance, and I let those actors' voices ring in my mental ears and dialogue the thing that way. And that was a great experience. So I still love writing myself, because you still get to do cool stuff. I love playing with other franchise companies' toys when they let me. I like doing my own stuff as well. So I'll never stop doing that. But the other side of my career, the getting other people in print, I can't see myself stopping doing that either. I like that too much. When I was in LA in July, I had a meeting with a big American book publisher for a killer anthology, and I'm doing this because if it comes off, I got some huge names interested, and that'll be another good one. And it's just like the idea is just so juicy, and it's like I can't wait to give that theme to a bunch of A-list writers, because I know they'll just blow me out of my chair.
Yep.
I'll just be there, the slavering fanboy that gets to read their stories first because I'm the editor. So yeah, it's a very lucky position I find myself in. Big kudos to Jerry Huntman for giving me this gig of helping set this thing up. But yeah, I get to scratch both those sets of itches, my friend, if that's not too disturbing a clinical image.
No. I've got a few itches that I like to scratch too, mate. So we both share a bit of a scratchy, place here and there. But it's good to have itches that you've got to scratch, man.
Indeed. Now, mate, how far is Townsville from Gladstone?
Oh, probably a day's drive, man. You'd get there, leave relatively. Oh, no, you wouldn't have to leave at the crack of dawn. If you left at the crack of dawn, you'd probably be there by midday or mid.
So is Townsville's north of Gladstone?
Yeah, by a way. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Because I may be going up to Gladstone at Christmas time. I know.
Right.
What's halfway? Maybe we can find a spot halfway between.
Well, you never know, mate. We certainly keep in touch now. We can,
it'd be very nice to meet you and have a cuppa with you face to face.
Yes, absolutely, mate. I 100% agree. Like the universe opens doors, Chris. So we can organise things, man. And anything is possible, man. So it's absolutely, man. Because I've had, one of the things that I guess I have 2023 has been a weird year for me, man. I haven't, I guess I haven't been at my best in terms of a person this year, and having situations that I didn't have the faculties or the, I guess, emotional intelligence or just the intelligence or experience to handle personally, professionally, with friends, with colleagues. But what I would like to say is after several months of just taking time to myself, I guess, growing the garden and realizing just how damn lucky I am to be able to have met so many people with Chinwag, and people like yourself who like you're all, everyone, yourself, everyone that's been on Chinwag are all heroes of mine, regardless of your position.
You're very kind, mate. You're very kind.
Regardless of wherever the comic book world has taken you, I'm super lucky. And Chris, if it is absolutely possible, mate, for us to meet halfway, I will 100%.
Excellent, mate. So we're still sorting out our final Christmas itinerary, but a visit up to Gladstone was on the cards the week after, so I might throw that your way. Do you have any relatives south of Townsville that you check in at Christmas time at all? Or?
Oh, no, not really, but I know enough people up and down the coast that,
all right, so it would be a halfway thing probably. Well, look, you never know your luck in the big city, mate. We'll see if my timetable's flexible enough and we can figure something out, we'll do it. Otherwise, I sometimes go up to Gold Coast and Brizzy Supernovas and Oz Comic Cons and those kind of things. So, you know, if you're ever in my state, give me a hooroo, and we'll definitely do something. You know, but look, you know, you'd be most generous. Now, does anyone on the chat do you do questions, or have we got no time for that?
If anyone, mate, we can do questions. I've got all the time in the world for you, mate, and for everyone out there that's interested in comic books. So if there is anyone out there, there will be people watching. They just like to sit back and listen to talk, and most of the time, man. So chuck us some questions if you're out there. Sis, if you got any tucked in there, we can fire away. And while we're waiting, Chris, I'll just I'll give a shout out to Shane and Carey and ComX for sponsoring Chinwag and being patient with me over the year and putting up with myself as I put all the broken pieces back together to try and at least begin the process of being whole again. Now Friday night drink and draw returns Friday evening. I believe it's 7:30 this week, and Superman is the theme, so it's the usual crew back on board.
Oh, very nice.
There's the Thursday night make a comic book show with good old mate Ed Kearsley and Sis, and if no one's seen that, you should check it out. It's a couple of artists get together and they draw a panel for a page of a comic book with the character that Ed's created, and it's a good show. It's fun. It's interesting to see how the process is, like with the limited amount of time, and to see what artists can do. There's a whole heap of content flying out and about too. There's artists doing 1 hour shows of drawing, characters. Dave Dye's done a couple of lessons on teaching, like things, and Dave Dye certainly knows what he's doing. So if you want to check out Dave Dye's work, anyone watching,
his stuff is great. His stuff is beautiful. Just as this authentic quality about it, this emotionally engaging style.
Yeah, mate. Oh, here we go. Quick Nick. Hello, Quick Nick. I do hope you are well, my friend. Question. What's Chris's take on Superman as a character?
Okay. Yeah, look, as I made a reference to before, Oh, and just 2 seconds before I forget, I want to just on your comments before, Leigh. You could be the spokesperson for one of my pep talks in writing and drawing, because the humility you just displayed about, you've had a year when you haven't been optimum. One of the things I say to writers and artists is you cannot succeed in life without failing. You actually have to understand that failure is part of your evolutionary process in both your personal character and in a skill or a talent. If there's not failure, there's not growth. What's the difference between the people that we like and the people that we can't stand and don't want to be near? Is those that can't admit that they make mistakes and care enough about people around them to try and do something about them. So, hats off to you, mate. But Superman, look, I talked before about my buddy Mark Wade, and he is like, the world's greatest Superman fan. I think he's read every Superman story ever published. He's doing a killer version of the moment called The Last Days of Lex Luthor for DC's Black Label. The first issue is sensational. So Mark's got a million ideas about Superman, and I've been privy to having lunch and dinner with him over the years many times where we've touched on the topic. But my take on Superman is there is nothing out of date or old-fashioned about Superman. He is as relevant and viable a superhero as Batman is. The problem is that some writers struggle with, but he's all powerful. So how do we put something in the story that's actually a threat or a danger that he's got to deal with, and he's got to sweat and have trouble beating to make him interesting? How do we make it convincing that Superman's going through a tough time? And the thing is, for decades, none of the writers of Superman had a problem with that. They could just write their way through the stories, and they could come up with stuff every month that would give him a hard time, whether it was a new villain or whether it was somebody put one of his friends in danger or someone was going to... They could find something interesting that would make it only a Superman story. And I think a lot of writers get almost like a deer in the headlights. Oh, he's so powerful. How do I make him still powerful and do that? And it's just, you just do it. You just go, well, it's imagination. I'll make the villain as powerful as they need to be, including more powerful than him. And it's science fiction, so I can make original science reasons why they're more powerful than him, or why they might be suppressing his powers, or why they might be causing him grief. So I think that's part of it. People wrestle with, because you know what comics are all, I've got to ground it in realism. And I think they struggle in that fight of, how do I make it realistic? Because that's the trend since, the 80s. How do I do that? And how do I, and I think that's been the problem for 50 years. Some writers have really found it hard to get in the groove. You look back in the 70s and 60s, look, and particularly the forgotten Superman era of the 70s, is to get all those old, go to the secondhand bookshop and buy these mountains of these black and white Planet comics that were reprints of DC Superman stories from the 70s, right? And that's how I got my 70s Superman knowledge. And, the plots were they were cleverer than the 60s ones, and they introduced that realism. And then, but 80s was like, it's almost like Superman has suffered post-Watchmen, post-Dark Knight. People haven't been able to reconcile the two things. And those writers that do good contemporary Superman stories, sorry, Nick, I'm taking so long with your answer, mate. I'm a bloody big mouth. That's what I feel is the is what's getting in some people's way. They just got to get comfortable with it and just trust themselves that they can find threats that he can deal. He doesn't have to be necessarily pulling needles out of junkies' arms to be relevant today. He can still be Superman and still do cool and down to earth, realistic things. And it doesn't mean, his power scales mean that he's not useful in the modern world.
I think you're pretty much right with Superman there. There's been some pretty cool modern takes. I mean, for me, Chris, I'm loving it. Supes all the way. There you go.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate that, Nick.
He's a champion. Actually, Chris, if you do want to read a fine book, man, check out Detective Budgie. He's a talented little fella too, man. So I would throw a shout out to Quick.
I've seen him on a couple of the Drink and Draws and other ones of Sizzle's meetings.
Yeah, no, he knows his stuff, mate. Like, he's worth checking out, let me tell you. And a good dude too. So I hope you're well, Nick. Take care, bud. Mate, I tend not to. I don't read a lot of modern. I'm more Australian orientated, obviously, and anything I can get my hands on. But there have been some interesting arcs over the years with Superman. Those black and white comic books you're talking about. I was lucky. Particularly, you sort of took me back to a moment talking about them. And I think it was like the Federal were another.
I think Federal came along. So there was the Planet Comics, and then there was Federal / Murray Comics, which I think was the people that sort of either they bought Planet or they took the license for the reprint material away from Planet or whatever. I don't know what Kevin Patrick would know it all. But they did the same thing, black and white collections.
Yeah, well, I used to read a lot of Superman with those because when I went to Canberra for the first time when I was 5, I was very lucky to have cousins at that stage that collected those. So I very vividly remember my uncle at the time, Phil, owned a squash court, and the whole family decided to go out and play squash, but they left little 5-year-old Leigh behind in the house. I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing in today's society. It may be frowned upon, but back then it was like, we'll leave the little fella at home. Don't stick your finger or a knife in the socket, and good luck to you. So, being a 5-year-old kid, I remember going into my cousin Grant's room, and now in hindsight probably wasn't a wise idea, but kids are inquisitive, as I guess I still am at this age, and jumped under the bed. Didn't jump, but looked under the bed as you do. There's a box. What's in the box? Well, there's a whole heap of black and white Federal comic books, man, and they were the Superman reprints, and they were an awful lot of the Neil Adams Batman reprints and stuff.
Oh,
so and Mike Ploog.
You hit the mother load.
Yeah, and Mike Ploog's Ghost Rider early stuff. So I spent that day. I remember sitting on the couch and. Very still not being obviously able to read too well, you know what I mean, but developing and falling in love with the fact that I could still, even though I couldn't understand every word, I could flow with the story and see where the paneling was taking me and stuff like that, and
the stuff from that era. The storytelling was superb.
Oh, man. I remember them vividly, man. And sometimes when I hit a page that I'm not 100% sure on, I tend to get the few pages either side in that because I work weird, man. And I watch the flow. of it. I've got a table across here, and I lay them out, and if they flow, and I think that they can work, together without words, and I'm happy. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, and that's, it's not quite a lost art, but I do frown when I pick up a lot of comics these days, and the storytelling from panel to panel isn't simple, clean, and crystal clear, because that's what it has to be. A beautiful picture is a beautiful picture, but if I can't figure out how the hell we jump from that panel to that panel, they haven't done their job.
Yeah.
Haven't done their job.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's I guess what Superman means to me.
Great stuff. What a great story. Excellent.
Yeah. So there you go. There you go. There's a piece of information on my.
Lovely. Good stuff.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. Darren Close. Hello,
Mr.
mate.
Close. Hey, yep. Hey, Mr. Close.
What's he saying here? Not quite federal books, but I remember Marvel published Punisher magazine, an oversized black and white book collecting the early Punisher stories on newsprint. Wills Portacio with Scott Williams inks. Lovely. I actually have a lot of those issues when they came out. My dad bought those, and that was the first time I discovered Wills and Scott Williams together. I would definitely agree with you, Darren. There's
very
some lovely
nice. Wilts' stuff does look beautiful in black and white.
Well, I haven't seen a lot of his stuff in black and white, but those comic books are lovely. He was very unique.
Relevant Punisher trivia. So the Punisher appeared in Amazing Spider-Man 125 back in the 70s.
Yeah.
But it actually wasn't that long after that they tried him out to be a solo character, and he had, I'm pretty sure he definitely had one, but he might even have had two standalone black and white magazine appearances on his own in Marvel's black and white magazine, things that were allowed to be a bit racier and avoided the Comics Code Authority. So I think one was a black and white Marvel thing called Marvel Super Action #1, starring the Punisher. And I think it was a Punisher with maybe a Dominic Fortune backup or something like that. But it was, might have been Tony DeZuniga artwork, but it was black and white. It was gutsy. It was the full origin of the Punisher with the family getting killed in the park and all that. And they were really going no holds barred, trying to copy that 1970s Don Pendleton, the Destroyer book series. So, showing far more of the violence that they weren't showing in the Spider-Man appearances. So there was that, and I think there was a Marvel preview that he was in as well, but I'm not 100% sure on that. So he had one or two, and they were the only times he had his own comic for years.
Yeah.
And then later on in the 80s or whatever, they what's his face, Mike Zeck and Stephen Grant did that 5-part series, and that was a smash hit. And he's been in the regular color comics since then, up until recently when they stopped the character for a while. Really interesting character. Some shadow over the use of him these days, but quite a clever logical jump from a paperback book genre into comics.
Yeah, I like the Punisher, man. The Mike Zeck one you're talking about, man, I love the first 4 issues, and then no disrespect to Mike Vosberg, because Mike Vosberg was a hell of an artist too in his time.
He's still around. He's a great artist.
There you go. I think he might have been rung up at midnight and told to get him a comic.
That was one of those cases where the schedule ruled the roost, and really, they should, I'd pay good money if they went back to Mike Zeck and said, could you draw it today and we'll put it out as a new trade paperback with you doing the last 20 pages the way the first 80 have been done, because it was sad. It was a real shame.
Yeah,
And it didn't, do Paul Mike Vosberg any favors, because it was just such a disruption.
Yeah, it was, man. It totally was. And I first came across, that I remember, Mike Vosberg did some issues of now what I think. Now this will I'll get your take on this, Chris. I think that the first, I would say 100 issues. This is a big call by me here, right? The first 100 issues of G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, from Marvel. I don't know about it now, or where it is in, where it is in the whole scheme of things now. But from issue 1, where they introduced him in Cobra Island, I was lucky because Dad picked that one up for me.
Yep.
And the first comic that I ever bought, with Dad giving me like $2, man, I bought G.I. Joe issue 7. And I've got that, and I still say to this day, Snake Eyes is one of the greatest comic book characters that's ever been created, man.
I'm going to disappoint, because I don't know the Joes that well. I did buy that number 1 of the first run, and I think I bought 2 and 3, but I didn't keep getting it. So I didn't become a G.I. Joe fan follower as I did with most other Marvel and DC mainstream and a lot of other companies' characters. So, but the Joes I didn't. Look, just for whatever reason, something didn't click with me to keep. I probably had to make a choice between that and Spider-Woman or something, who knows. And I probably I couldn't tear myself away from Carmine Infantino Spider-Woman. So I'm not, but Vosberg, I'm familiar with his stuff. You'll see it. He's got stuff on Facebook, and he's still doing dynamite stuff.
Yeah.
He's still
doing great storyteller, man.
He's beautiful. Another one of these guys, sets it up, and he's got a sense of drama. He's got a sense of the characters look real. They're all standing in, poses and positions that look, well staged, but I don't mean in a fake sense. He's going, design sense is magnificent. So he's still doing stuff.
Man, in a strange way, the thing with like G.I. Joe, I guess, that sort of comes back to what we were talking about before, about the flow and the strength of storytelling and things, is there's from memory, it is issue 87 of G.I. Joe. And if anyone, this is just me, this is another comic book that I bought at the time, and I still go back to it just for a refresh, maybe once every 12 months sort of thing. And could be wrong, but let's go with issue 87. And it's a Storm Shadow solo story. There is not a single word in the comic.
Was that?
It is, mate, from start to finish, it is just following the story.
Look, I love it when that's done well.
Oh, man, that is one of... I can't actually remember the artist's name. That sounds dreadful, and I do apologize to him. But that is some amazing storytelling, because Storm Shadow's doing things in that comic book, man. Like there's the Red Ninjas, taking him on. He's in a dojo and he's making movements that reminded me of when I was a little kid. I was reading Frank Miller's Daredevil, and he brought in the acrobatics with the spinning and the jumping and the bouncing, And like, yeah, man, I reckon, yeah, issue 87 G.I. Joe is pretty solid story for storytelling.
Lovely stuff, you know.
Yeah, I'll throw that out there. I'll throw that out there.
Awesome.
You know what? Because we can. All right, Chris, bring us to an end, my man. Mate, it has been an absolute pleasure, man. Man, thank you so much. Thank you for being you. And Darren.
Thank you, Darren. That's very kind.
And for anyone listening that can't read it, Chris is a great dude. I really appreciated his reaching out to me recently, and not enough nice folks are like that in this scene. Darren, P.S. I'm liking the new hairstyle, Leigh. Thank you, Darren. Thank you very much, mate. Appreciate that. And
I think that look is working for you, Mr. Joker. I think that's working for you.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Sequeira. I'll tell you, before we go, I'll tell you a funny story. On the day that I decided to shave, I went after about probably about 8 years of having a beard of varying lengths to deciding to shave, and then I went and actually went back fresh. So not only did I feel like I had glad wrap over my face, the wind was whipping me on my face. It was very odd. I basically put my head on my hand at one point, and my head nearly slipped off my hand because it was used to, like getting stuck into the beard. And my dogs decided that they were going to bark at me for 10 minutes because they had absolutely no idea who I was. So, what do you do? Well, beware of the dogs if you wear facial hair, because, they didn't like it, but they do now, so I'm lucky. All right. So Chinwag is over and done for the first one back. So thank you very much for everyone being patient and enjoying the show and hanging around for a great conversation and great guest. It's always a pleasure. I'm a very lucky man. Now, we're on every 2 weeks now, just for balance of life, and it felt better for me to do these things over every fortnight. Just felt better and felt like I could give you my all at the time that I could. So I am going to let everyone know that the next guest on the show, I'm not sure if this gentleman has done an interview before, but I'm super excited to meet this guy, and that is Mr. Aidan Roberts, who recently won the big old award in September at the Paper Cuts Festival with Dead City Lullabies. So, man, keen to see what that dude is all about. Keen to see what that dude is trundling out. So, thank you, everyone. When you see darkness in the world, shine your light. Doesn't cost anything to be kind, and community is unity. Take care.
Lovely stuff. It's good night from me, and it's good night from him.
This show is sponsored by the Comics Shop. Check out comics.cx for all things comics and find out what comics is all about. We hope you enjoyed the show.